Today I'm going to study Raylib and SDL, which are two different libraries to... I'm not really sure what Raylib does yet, but SDL is supposed to allow you to manage the functionality of the operational system. So video, audio, and stuff like that. And I've won a battle with CMake for some time now. I'm probably not going to be able to do anything today, but I'm trying to find a way or create a standard project that I can use to not have to think about the build process again, because it's very annoying. So I'm trying to figure out to structure a project in the beginning that allows me to set up the external libraries. But I tried a bunch of different ways already, and I tried to make it with several different examples, but I couldn't figure out so far. I couldn't figure out yet how to do it. So basically, there are several different ways. One way is with Conan. I think I'm gonna try to avoid using VC package. I prefer to use Conan for downloading, but I also think that it's probably not very good. I don't want to rely on a package manager. I think it's probably better to just have access to the source code from the projects, the external libraries that I use. And I think that C and C++, from what I've looked so far, is kind of different than Python and JavaScript, because from the stuff that I've seen on YouTube, at least, I'm not really sure, obviously, because I haven't built a lot of things. But I think usually people use the same libraries for all the projects, and there isn't a lot of libraries that you have to use. So what I'm thinking about is just creating something that allows me to use the popular libraries that I found, and then every project that I'm gonna make is probably gonna use the same libraries, so I can just use the same standard template, and then I don't have to think about this stuff anymore. And one way to do it is using fetch declare on CMake, that is just gonna download the package from GitHub, but I kind of don't like that very much, because like, what if the package changes over time or something like that? I want something that is like easy to do. There's other approaches that require you to put the path, the specific path you want on the CMake file. But that's also not very good, because then if you have another computer, you have to think about the setup again, and I'm gonna try to avoid that. So the other one is using add subdirectory that I have here. That's the one that I'm gonna try to use it. And that, I think that it builds the package, whatever path you put here, relative path from the root of the project, or from where the CMake list text file is at. So this is the one that I'm trying to use now. And then there's other approach that I was looking from this project here, which is a game programming or game engine playlist on YouTube. And he creates a batch script, and then the batch script sets up a bunch of things, but this one wasn't working because of audio library here, a header file from the audio library. And this is the stuff that is confusing me the most so far, is that I don't understand the relationship. I think that the relationship between these target include directories and the path you put on the file is based on whatever path you put here. So like this would be the root path, let's say, from the libraries that you're downloading. But then the problem is that when you add external libraries, it's kind of hard to understand what kind of path I should put here to make the library work. And I think that most of the problems that I'm getting are because of that. Like, I don't understand how under the hood the CMake or Conan is setting up the paths, and where are they putting the resulting files, let's say. And there's a couple of different files as well, a couple of different libraries. So there's a static library and dynamic libraries, and I don't know very well the difference between them yet. So this one, I was trying to make it work with CDL on another project, but it doesn't work. And I don't remember exactly why. But then I tried to create this simple one just to see, to remove all the other code, just see if I can make it. But then like it works here. And this is another weird thing that I'm not really sure. I think it's probably something to do with VS Code. I'm using VS Codium, which is kind of like a... what's Chromium is to Chrome, VS Codium is to VS Code. So, but yeah, I think it's something to do with the way that VS Code works with the launch JSON here. That's for some reason like it looks like it compiles everything, but then when I try to run, it doesn't give me any message, and it just says like an X here that it fails. So I try to use GDB to debug, and it's just a message that it doesn't work. So first I build, then I build again with CMake and pass this stuff here, which creates the file on the build folder here, the executable. And then I try to run this, but it doesn't work. A build release just gives this X here and is complaining from what I've seen trying to run with GDB. I think it complains that it doesn't. I didn't run here. I ran with the debugger. Yeah, but it complains that during the startup something went wrong. So I think that it is probably, which is annoying, like another annoying thing that I don't know what to do about it. It's not giving any errors, and I changed this stuff here to show, but it's not showing any errors here. So it compiles everything, but it seems like the linking is not working, and it doesn't show any errors, which is kind of annoying. So I'm not really sure what to do about it. I think if I compile like this, it's gonna show the message there, so it's probably... And the code that I had there was just from the example that they share on GitHub. They have a documentation here. So I think that raylib is an alternative to that, but it's probably gonna be the same thing, but I'm gonna try now. Just gonna replace the... delete the build folder, replace the external with the raylib that I got there, and put this code here on the main and see if it works. If it doesn't work, I'm just gonna search. I'm gonna study the folders and the files from both projects to understand more how they work, and then continue to try to make it happen. This one is kind of weird because on the other project is the same. Like they had some breaking changes from SDL2 to SDL3, so I expect that maybe this is the reason why the other project wasn't working. The way that he was including was by using this name here, but then at some point they recommend you to use the other one, this pattern here. This stuff on CMake is kind of hard to understand as well. Like, what's the point of this? So as far as I understand now, you have to put the subdirectory, then you have to use this stuff here. And from one of the videos that I saw, he said that the name is kind of misleading, but I'm not 100% sure why. He said that it doesn't link, it does something else, but I didn't understand. Then you pass the name of the executable. So you have like each time you add an executable on the CMake is going to be a target. That's what they call targets. And then you can, every time you want to associate something with the target, you have to specify the target name before, and then you put whatever names of the libraries you want later. And this stuff here I just got from the other project, from the Barnsut project that I was trying to build. She just creates a, I think it links the shaders. I don't know very well how it does that. I know you use this file, so it looks like it is copying from the shaders folder, this one, to this destination. So I think it just copies this folder here to the build folder, but I don't understand why you have to do that. Shaders. So let me delete the build thing, the cache. If I do it like this, I'm pretty sure it's gonna work. I think I tested before, but then obviously there's no point. I'm trying to figure out a way that I can download the external libraries like a simple template that has, and it's kind of weird to me that I found a lot of tutorials that use VS Code, but most of the people use Visual Studio. It's kind of weird to me. I was expecting to see more people use just CMake, so I don't understand really well why most people use Visual Studio. Because like I don't like the logic for me is that I don't like relying on a specific ID to build this stuff. You're gonna have to rely on things, like I'm gonna rely on CMake anyway, but I think the least amount of things that I rely on, the better, because then if something breaks, you can change. So I don't understand the logic for most people to use Visual Studio. It's probably because it's easier, but if possible, I wanna try to make it happen without, like, regardless of which ID I'm gonna use. That looks like it builds. I don't know. Now it works, but then it doesn't. So I think what I'm gonna do is just change this stuff to Raylib. So there's two different libraries that I found. One is this is the official one from the website that have a GitHub. Their link is this repo, and the other one is a wrapper. But I think I'm gonna try to use this one first. The other one is a wrapper for C++ based on this one. So I have to see how should I put this there. I can use ChatGPT or search. Probably gonna go into this Discord, see if there's anyone that, or any resources to help. So from the video I was watching from Solding, he says that people complain about this library because it doesn't have a namespace, and it clutters your, like, the global namespace with this, like, when you use Raylib you can't use these names anymore because it's on the global. But he said you can like remove this or change or whatever. But they're probably very similar. This one from the SDL. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT how to specify on target link libraries and target include directories. This is something I'm struggling with as well. Like most of the libraries don't have, like, it's kind of hard to find. Some of them allow you to provide environment variables on CMake to specify the path, but I couldn't find. The only way that I found this is through other tutorials and other recommendations, not from the official documentation. Maybe if I just try with the name, is this usually how they do it, but that's the thing, sometimes it's different. If I remove this, I'm honestly considering just getting all the header files separately manually. Just get all the header files, all the C files, and then just put them on a giant or on a single folder, and then include everything and just build everything like that. Because I think probably I'm always gonna use the same stuff to build things. And I just wanna get to the parts where I start coding. Because that's gonna be hard as well, so. So maybe now it works. It's still showing this. It's kind of lagging. I'm not really sure why. just gonna put the same version. The other thing that I've seen is that people usually recommend using Vulkan instead of using OpenGL. And I'm not sure if what I was saying was recorded or not. So what I was saying is that Vulkan, people recommend using Vulkan because it's a more up-to-date version than OpenGL. It's like kind of like a wrapper, or not really a wrapper, but it's a optimized version of OpenGL. But the problem with Vulkan is that it's closed source and OpenGL is open source. So I think I'm gonna prefer to use OpenGL even though it's older. So this is from Raylib. So I'm gonna try to put the example there that they show and see if it works. So I'm gonna open with VS Code to see. Later, I'm gonna test first if it works, then I'm gonna open on VS Code to see if it's gonna show any warnings about the SDL library. What I want to find as well is some some videos or resources that talk about how usually people like develop to production level of like how they structure everything to offer the software later. But it's very hard to find videos like that. Most of the time, people just talk about the like how to build everything, but not how to distribute everything. Because usually from the software that I used, it's usually you're gonna have a bunch of like you have folders and files, and then usually there's some database, and then there's some files for on Windows the .dll extension, which is the dynamic linking library, I think. Dynamic linked library, and Linux has another. It's pretty much the same thing, but it has another name. And then there's the static library, which is the .a library, .a extension. And I'm not really sure. Like maybe I should search for that later. Exactly the difference between them, but also like I think there's a difference between building the project yourself to develop and distributing the project, because this is what I'm thinking about. Is probably maybe it doesn't matter that much if you have specific paths or if it is more annoying to build the project if you're developing, because when you're gonna distribute it, you're just gonna like serve the files that have already the built project, let's say. So like it's just you're serving the end product, and then the people that are gonna consume the product don't need to manually install everything. That obviously that makes a lot more sense to me. But I don't understand very well how does that work. Like if I'm using all these libraries, then and I create the executable, then what if the person that is gonna use the executable doesn't have the libraries? So what happens at that point? And I couldn't find videos talking about this. This is kind of hard to search for as well. To think about the keywords to search. Yeah, obviously, it wouldn't make any sense to me that the people like have to, because otherwise, like nobody would use any software. So if you have to know all this stuff to just use the executable. So I assume that the way that it works is that the people that when you build, you need to set everything up, but then after you have the final executable, you're just gonna like automatically do everything, like on the whatever operational system you're using, because the libraries already have the code to deal with this stuff. So yeah, but I'm not really sure about it. Nice, finally. No, so far this is the only one that worked. Unfortunately, I can't resize here, so I assume that obviously I have to put some code there. I'm pretty happy about that, to be honest. It's the first time that I see something on the string that opens a window. Obviously, I do wanna figure out. Hey man, what's up? I do wanna figure out the other libraries on how to make it happen. So I think I'm gonna open on VS Code, and I'm going to try to replace the name, replace the library, and see if the other one works or if it shows the warnings. So what I'm gonna do as well is just study the source code from the libraries, because I want to understand how they do everything. I think I mentioned this on last time that I streamed, but I kind of go back and forth between being very, very frustrated and very grateful, because every time that I complain in my mind about how hard it is to set up everything up, I remember that people built all these libraries, so You don't have to do it, and it's a lot of work. So there's always two sides to the coin. Tried really on C, couldn't understand, and just gave up. Found lead code more attractive. Yeah, I think it depends on how much you value what you're doing. Like, there's always a trade-off. Like, it's Occam's razor, like the path of least resistance. So usually people are gonna follow the path of least resistance, which because it's more energy efficient. So that's gonna create the Pareto principle, I think, on social structures, which is gonna create a hierarchy. But if you're trying to become competent at what you do, then I think you should always try to go with the path of more resistance in the short term, because then you're gonna get skills, but there's always the trade-off, obviously, because you can't build everything by yourself. So that's another reason why I'm trying to do all this stuff with Visual Studio Code instead of Visual Studio. And this is what I mean, like that I find it weird that most of the tutorials about, like, they rely on Visual Studio because they don't understand like why. Because obviously it's harder here, but then you actually understand everything that is going on. So over the long term, I think it pays off. But obviously then, like, there's always the trade-off, because then, like, maybe I'm just wasting a bunch of time here and I could be building stuff already if I was using Visual Studio, but it doesn't feel right to me. Because then you always rely on the IDE to build. You want to make games and focus on data structures? Yeah. Yeah, that's fine, true. Some people only use Python as well, and then they don't know all this stuff, and they are fine. So yeah, I don't know. I think it's more a question of values and like who do you want to be. But I think if you want to, your goal is to be like very good software engineer, then there is no other way. Like, you have to understand everything, I think. So always take the path of more resistance on the short term, and then on the long term you're gonna be better, because then every time you feel that pain and frustration, you're gonna, it's kind of like going to the gym. Like, you can only grow with progressive overload. If you're always putting the same weights, you're never gonna grow. So you have to force your body to grow, and the only way is through pain. I think it's pretty similar here, but it's very frustrating, to be honest. Like, I spent probably more than a week already just trying to make this stuff work. Okay, so what should I do here? I think I'm gonna try to make it happen with SDL now. Oh, no worries. Here it shows the. Oh. I think here is gonna show. So it's probably something with VS Code that's not. It's not the same as VS Code. Just kind of annoying, to be honest. This is one thing that I've been questioning about, like this trade-off that I just talked about on the path of least resistance. It's about NeoVim. I installed NeoVim, but I think that for me, and this is probably where the most of the discussions are going to be around, like, because it's not black and white. It's always dependent on circumstance, and circumstance is going to have an infinite amount of potential. So that's why people discuss things, and the discussion is the computation of the collective consciousness. Is like social structures computing what's going to be the best strategy given the environment. So that's always going to converge towards like, people are always going to debate because it's always going to depend on the circumstance, and circumstance is unique for each one. So it's like subjective, and then the objective is the gravitational force of the network, which is always relative. But for that, is like the debate between NeoVim and VS Code. And so far, I think that's more efficient to use VS Code, because like most of the stuff that I saw from NeoVim, it's gonna take a lot of time to set everything up, and like I think it's just not worth it for now, at least. It would be good if there was a setup that had like pretty much like this initial thing for VS Code, so that people like me that don't understand everything can just get started quickly, and then later on, if you want, like it's kind of like an analogy with the gym would be like if you never went to the gym and then you just trying to deadlift like 500 pounds. It doesn't make sense. Like you should always start with the bar and then like progress from there. So like this is this is the same thing with NeoVim. So it feels like I'm starting like for a lot of weights already, and it would be better if I have like at least a decent setup in the beginning. But yeah. So I'm not really sure if it's worth it or not. I'm using NVM as main editor. It helped me stop using. Yeah, that's what like I think it's better objectively if you can do it, but based on the energy trade-off, it's not worth it. At least for me right now, because there's so much stuff to study as well. So like the tutorials I've seen to set up is like 2 hours, and then you obviously it's not going to be 2 hours because you're going to run into problems. Then you're going to have to like spend a bunch of time trying to figure out. And with all the time, I could be figuring out CMake or becoming better at C. So I search for plugins as well, but it's still like kind of hard to figure out. There's all the key bindings as well. The main thing that is annoying to me is that there isn't like a part here where I can see the folders and files. Because I think that's like having to memorize everything in your mind is not worth it. It's much better if you can just look at the files. It's already hard enough to code everything and remember or think about like how everything is connected and think about the code. If I have to remember the file structure so like I can access specific things, it's not very good. Yeah. It's like I said, like people, like there isn't right or wrong. It's just gonna be based on circumstance. And because the circumstance is infinite, there's always gonna be the discussion. And then the evolution is gonna show, which is gonna be a byproduct of the markets. And I think that's which is kind of the dangerous thing about artificial intelligence and everything else, that it creates the Pareto principle because it's like a vicious cycle. It's like it's not balanced because the company that can make it happen, like they can reinvest and then creates an asymmetry of power, and then it becomes more and more efficient to use that company. But like if it becomes excessive, then it's not sustainable, I think. It's not like there's always going to be differences, obviously. There's always going to be a hierarchy, but it's more about the gradient of the distribution. I want to see if it's gonna give me any errors. Maybe we should add both. I think it's better to just add one of them, then I see, like if I get any errors, I'm gonna be able to know if it comes from, even though it's unlikely that it's gonna come from Whaley, because I saw that it works. Just gonna copy the example here that they have. Maybe I should just try to use the include here and then see if it works like that. Have you checked Solding? He's using TMUX so easily. Yeah, but I think he has a lot of experience. That's the thing. But If I could snap my fingers and then like learn everything, then I think it's worth it to do it. But if I have to spend the time learning, then I'm not really sure about it. Like, because usually the things that are rewarding in life, they are painful in the beginning and then they pay off long term. So for that reason, I think it makes sense. But there's so much stuff to learn that I'm not really sure like if it's the ROI is there. So like maybe because obviously if I become better at C or in C++ and CMake, like now it would be a lot more rewarding, I think, than to become better at the IDE. But I'm not really sure about it. Yeah, and recreate everything I see. I sing. Like, yeah. There's also the other thing that's like, because of AI, I think that it might be likely that there will be other types of IDs very soon. So I'm not really sure if it's worth it to learn if like there's the potential to everything for everything to change like very soon. But it does concern me that Microsoft has like most people use everything that's done from Microsoft. Like my concern is that with AI is gonna be like more and more just one company capturing everything, and I think that's very bad because then it lacks balance, as I said. So it becomes like too concentrated, too much power in one company. That's very bad. And obviously you can't blame the company because it's just the rules of the game. So like, don't hate the player, hate the game kind of thing. Because everything like, and this is the thing that I think that a lot of people like don't, because it's kind of hard to get. Like most people think about the person instead of thinking about the system. Like instead of thinking about a specific person, you should look at things as probabilities, and then like the constraints of the system are gonna dictate the behavior of people. So I think that's just a problem with the way that everything is set up. The whole relationship between terminals and non-terminal goals. And I disagree with the view. I think people on the acceleration side have this view that the market is gonna automatically solve everything. I disagree with that. Doesn't make any sense to me. Because based on all the previous technology, it seems like we are not good at regulating ourselves at scale, because I think that the number is off balance. So we create tribalistic thinking, and that's not scalable in space-time because the degree of the frequency of the computation creates like a vicious cycle where the technology is out of balance with the thing that created. So like there's a lack of alignment on the incentives and the harmony of the system. So over time, it polarizes everything. And I think that's pretty clear if you see like the data for like a bunch of different aspects of life. Like it seems like everything's getting more and more polarized because our lack of ability to balance everything out. So I don't think that the market's gonna automatically align AI by default. But obviously I don't know for sure, so maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong, so. I think the reason why they think like this is because the markets are grounded into a fundamental pattern of nature, I think, is the pattern of reproduction. So I do think that there is a fundamental thing there that's, but the problem that I have is that it's about the frequency of the distribution. So like markets create the Pareto principle, and then like there's always two sides to everything. So the market is the expansion, and then you should have the contraction. But the problem is that the contraction we have, which is politics and governance, is built on the same paradigm that the market is built at. So people in the governments, they get paid to do what they do. So like money is the like fundamental force. So and I think that's why it gets corrupted over time, because the regulation force is not scalable enough to, like, the markets are scalable because it's just supply and demand. So it creates an abstraction that computes the technology on real time, but governance is not scalable because of tribal thinking. And it's the whole problem with the alignment itself, like people separating themselves into groups. I think that's really dumb because you're just you're just incentivizing the tribal thinking that people have, and that's not scalable. So. And the only way to, I think that's like inevitable because you're always gonna have this separation because that's the nature of computation. But the only way to maximize the probability of alignment, I think, is just to recalibrate the computational frequency of the collective consciousness, so that like it arrives at a different equilibrium that's more sustainable. Oh, it looks like it works here. So maybe something with the code that they shared, and not with the library. I think I'm gonna. It complains about this kit. I don't understand 100%. I think the kit is like the set of tools that you use to compile the C and C++ code on VS Code. And then every time that I open VS Code, it shows the GUI thing, but that is the thing that I said like before, where I would prefer to not rely on these things. So, but I think it's probably better now to not worry about this and then just try to set up the kit. And when it shows, that if shows, here, scan for kits. I think I'm gonna use this one because it's the generator I'm using on CMake to create the build. And on the other VS Code, you worked. So I think you have to run that kit, and then after you run that, you set up the launch.json file. It's a file from VS Code that allows you to specify how you're gonna debug everything. And I'm using the recommendation from their documentation of GDB. So using the GDB debugger to, and then it's just gonna try to debug from whatever file I have selected here, as far as I can understand. I have seen your learning video. It's really good, even though you have used really hard to grasp keywords, but I'm looking forward for more. Oh, thank you, man. I don't know how long have you been working with Python? I learned, I think, less than... It's gonna be 3 years since I started learning how to code at the end of this year. And Python, I think, was like probably 5 or 6 months before, after I started learning how to code. I learned HTML and CSS and JavaScript before. So I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's like probably 2.5 years, something like that. So I think it works. So maybe it's just a problem with the code that they share on the documentation. Or maybe I just copied the wrong way, but it looks like it's not breaking here, so I'm not really sure now if it's working or not. It doesn't have any error messages here. It says it's maybe if I start with the on the command line, it's gonna work. It's gonna show something relevant. If I try to do this, and yeah, so it probably is fucking up on the At least the last time that I got this message was because I was breaking on the startup. And it looks like it isn't. So maybe it's working because it's not doesn't have anything. Let me try to put the print statement here. It's not working, right? Yeah. It's hard to know why though. Also, something that I've seen from other videos is that people usually create their own code to put the debugging messages and this kind of stuff. So maybe I should look into that. I think the last one that I remember seeing this is on this project here. So maybe I should try to copy the stuff that he does there. But this is the problem that I'm having so far, is that usually I get into this, like, all these projects are very complex, so then it becomes like one of those things where, like, I'm not really sure if I should start from the beginning or if I should try to spend a bunch of time trying to remove code from like complex projects until I find something that works. But I remember that here on this, I only watched, I think, 9 or 10 videos from the playlist, but he does some stuff that's he puts some code that is helpful to debug and log messages. So maybe I should try to copy the stuff he does here on my thing. Yeah, but I don't think that matters that much, the void here. Maybe it does. But oh, now like, it seems that it's working. Let me see. Hmm. I don't really understand expected token. Let me close this and try again, see if it happens. Oh, so yeah, it does work, but it's not breaking here. I'm not really sure why. It's printing the message, so it should be working. I think it doesn't matter if I put the void here. I don't understand very well, like, obviously on C and C++ you have to put the function declaration, and then function declaration is going to be like this, I think. And then you put the function definition, and the linker is going to match the two. But I don't understand for the main if it has a specific declaration. I think usually you're going to put the like argc, which is the count of how many arguments you're going to receive, and the argv is an array of strings, and then a string is going to be a pointer to another array. So it's an array of pointers that contain the arguments for running the code. So I think usually that's how people do it, but I'm not really I think that's for C. I'm not 100% sure on C++. So obviously, if this works, I'm going to try to put another, or maybe I just copy this. This is the stuff that I was talking about. So using the subscript here, I think is the same thing as using the other pointer. The subscription operator just, no, I'm not really sure because it's supposed to dereference the pointer, I think. So maybe when you pass like this, you access the arguments in a different way than when you use the two pointers. Maybe not actually, because like it's kind of declaring here, so I don't know for sure. I think I'm just gonna copy this one and then remove enough things to see if it works. Maybe if I put the breaking points here instead. And it just runs the thing. So it could be a problem with the way that I'm setting this up as well. This is another thing that was very annoying to figure out how to set up the debugger. And so now I'm not really sure. Let me try it with the GDB here. Yeah, the same thing. So the problem is like the way that it works on VS Code is that you have to put a test.json file and then you put the launch.json. The test.json compiles everything if you want, and the launch.json is the specification of what's gonna run the code. So like what I could do, I remember there is a key here I think you can put that you specify a test.json, and I can put a key there and then create a test.json file. But the issue with that is then like you have to figure out how to make the test.json work with the CMake. So and it's like, yeah, I think it's probably not. As first I should figure out how to like compile everything in the correct way when I'm using external libraries, because that's already hard enough. And then once I have that down, then I think it's probably, then I should probably worry about this thing. Or maybe I should watch more videos and then try to copy some other projects to get like functions to debug. I don't remember really well like where he puts here, because this is the like the final code that he had there on the repository, but from the tutorial there was a lot less code. So this is another thing that I'm struggling with now, is just understanding like how to. From most of the videos I've saw, people separate between like they create an engine folder and the source folder. So it's kind of hard for me to understand like what should I put. Should I create the engine, and what should I put on the engine? What should I put on the source? And it's kind of like the paradox, because in order for me to understand that, I have to build things. But then if I build, I don't understand. So it's kind of hard. I'm thinking about like the best way is probably to just incrementally put stuff here, and then once I get to the point that I think that what I'm building is complex enough, then it's probably the point where I should start separating everything into folders. But then it's gonna be kind of annoying because I'm gonna have to redo a bunch of things, I think, because of the way that CMake works. So there's also, yeah, but I think that this code is not going to be working, because I was going to say there is the possibility that this is working and I wasn't just getting messages, but I think when I try to run with the code that they put there, it says that it breaks on the startup. So There's probably something wrong with the code or the way that I'm setting up things, but it's kind of hard to know. I think I'm gonna be right back. I'll be right back. Yeah, this is the stuff that I was getting. So let me remove everything and see if it works. So it says this, it shows this stuff here. Then when I use GDB, it says that it breaks on startup. So Something is going on, but I'm not really sure what it is. I have to. I'm not really sure what to do, to be honest. Because I don't know which is the best approach. If I should just like, now that I think that Raylib works, if I should just start trying to build something with Raylib and then worry about this stuff later. But yeah, ideally, I would be able to build. I'm trying to build like a standard setup that I can use, and then I don't have to think about this stuff anymore. Like, it just gets like the core libraries that I think I'm gonna use, and then I just make a setup that installs all of them, and then I can forget about this stuff and just focus more on the building side, because it's gonna be very difficult, I think. So the problem is the whole thing that I talk about now, where like if I try to do it from the projects that I'm looking into the tutorials and like finding on the internet, it's gonna be too complex in the beginning. Then if I get an error, it's gonna be hard because I don't know where the error comes from, and I don't understand these libraries very well, like the functions that they have, how they do everything. So maybe that's the best approach, probably. Just start with Raylib now that I've seen that it works, and then, or maybe I can just look at the source code, even though it's not compiling for the SDL, and because I'm really curious to know how do they manage to call the window uh, function? Like, how do they interact with the operational system? I don't remember now if I'm just gonna run again if I did. It's probably not gonna work. Yeah, same thing. So maybe you can try to use ChatGPT. The issue with using ChatGPT is that I'm not really sure. I'm not gonna be able to know. So I think that's the way to use it is just to think about an experiment that I can do to verify if it's correct or not. I guess I could just change the path here. So what I'm having trouble understanding is like on the other project, the reason why it wasn't working is because I was trying to use Conan to install IM GUI, and on one of the includes it works, but then on a specific include that is from a header file from the IM GUI, it doesn't work. And I don't understand how it works very well. How IM GUI works very well, but I think that's the like is a library that allows you to create windows on multiple different operational systems. So the backend is the folder that provides functionality for each one of the operational systems. So if you're running something on Windows, you probably have to specify specifically which header file you're going to use from the IMGUI project. So like it's a header file from the IMGUI, but the header, like Conan can't find that file, but it can find the file from the IMGUI. So like the biggest issue that I have here that I don't understand very well is like what is the relationship between like the package manager, CMake, and the way that you should declare header files here. So, but it's very hard to think about a question that I can do uh, to figure out to clarify this. Because then obviously, I guess I can like try. I think I tried this as well, like to do like this, but it doesn't work. So let me. I'm gonna run with GDB on the other thing, and maybe I should try. And the problem is that I think I have to understand more how the libraries work. But if I, that's the thing. If I had like if I have something to compare with, if I knew how the library works, then I can compare with the way that it's supposed to work. But because I don't know how the functions work, like it's hard to get out of this. This is the message I get, and I'm pretty sure that I put some ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is gonna tell me that something with the linker. I think this was what I was thinking as well. This is why it got me thinking about this difference between dynamic link libraries and static libraries. So like another approach is just to like get all of these libraries and then build each one separately, and again then get whatever folders they have, or the executable or the object files or the static files, and then just put all of those files on the same directory, and then just specify that directory. But like that doesn't seem very good to me, because then you have to specify specific directory to make it work. So I think like it's probably better if I can make it happen with CMake directly. This is the thing, I don't like this approach very much. And the thing is that's gonna tell me stuff to SDL true, which is outdated. So maybe one thing I can ask is the relationship between the paths. I would not ask like this, but it's not the best. So one of these things that I was thinking about is that what if you have two different relative paths? Which was what I was trying to do in one of the projects, I think. Like if I have the include folder, and then I have another folder that is a subfolder of the include, and how is it gonna know from which relative path to search on the when you import the library? Hmm. I'm just gonna look at the codes, I think. Just gonna read the code from SDL, see if I can understand how it works. Because another thing that would be interesting to do, maybe, but the thing is, I'm not really sure if it's worth spending all the time. But you just like incorporate the source code on my own and like read the source code and try to implement on my own project and just get the stuff that I wanna use. Maybe that's I'm gonna do that now. Just study the. So let me copy this stuff again, and then I'm gonna try to go to the definitions. Because I am curious, but I think because there's so much codes, maybe it's not worth it doing that. But I'm curious to know. And this is the problem is that I can't lose sight of what I'm trying to do as well. Like, now maybe it's better to just use this. I should probably use Raylib and try to just build stuff with Raylib now and get to the point where I have the first thing, so I can bootstrap the process. Because I already did this stuff like a lot of times, and the thing that annoys me is that it's very inefficient to just go over and then I just like gonna create the flowchart on SkyDraw and then try to see how everything's connected. But it would be better to just get to the point where I can build the graphs on here. So maybe it's better to just use the Raylib and then try to build one step at a time. It's gonna be this. I wonder if I do that. Like, let me try to. So what I'm gonna do is just copy the header files that the code is using on the menu thing, and then I'm gonna see if it works. But the problem is that's gonna like everything's gonna be coupled together, so that's kind of the annoying thing. Yeah. Also, this uses something from Vulkan. But maybe this is a better path now. And how do I go to the definition? Hmm. It's probably the same name, but C file. Source render. Oh, this is already. So it's now a video. Here. As this one. Maybe this is the best thing to do, actually. I just try to rebuild everything of my own header files. Then just copy the code, whatever code is necessary. And I think that's probably, I'm gonna have to put everything. Because I'm not really sure how coupled everything's gonna be. It's not this one. Trying to see, I'm curious about what kind of function is gonna interact with the operational system. It's the same thing. I think it's a different function. I don't understand really well why this is a. It seems like it is a tree or a linked list. So I don't get why have children. It looks like it's just changing the flags of the struct, window struct. But I don't get at what point is it's probably one of this is the thing, it's probably not gonna be better, not gonna be good to do this like this way. I'm probably better off just focusing on building stuff with the Raylib and like searching online how to use the functions, use the library. And then after I build everything, then I can like focus on the other stuff that is the actual part that's gonna matter. Is just parsing everything and then creating the graph. Because I'm gonna spend a bunch of time here. Just like, there's gonna be a bunch of functions, then I'm gonna have to create a graph, like manually on the SkyDraw to understand how everything is connected. So it's probably this one, but this one is interesting as well. Obviously, it's handling the events. So everything works based on the struct there. This one is the main one. And this one's gonna contain the information of what's gonna happen. And I think it creates a loop. Usually from what I've seen now, that's how it works. You create a loop and then the loop is gonna, it's kind of like stacking a bunch of images together really fast. And then the frame rate is how many images you have per second, I think. It's like the frequency of the images, and that creates the illusion of the movement. And then inside of the loop, you check for events, I think. Check for events and check for inputs. And then based on the inputs, you change the state of whatever struct you have, I think. So it creates this struct, which is going to be the main one. Then based on these flags, it's going to do binary operations to change the flag. And then based on the flag, it's going to change the event, I think. It's going to select the event. So this is, I think, is the same function that the other function had. It's probably this one that calls the function from Windows. So probably the way that it works is that it's just a library from Windows, and then it accesses that library and calls that library. So it's just like a wrapper on the library. Pretty sure that I've seen this function before. It's probably here. I already lost on the sequence there. So yeah, it's a property. It gets a property of the window, which is the struct that initializes the beginning, and then passes that. So the property probably is like to manage what state the window is on. Source, video, Windows. It's actually not that hard to understand the concepts. And to make it work is very hard. And obviously, it's easier because they already built everything, so. Yeah, but you don't have a C file with the same name of this one. So maybe it comes from that one, because that was the one that you went there. So hmm. So I'm not really sure how to ask this as well, but the question I had, like, and I think I thought about this before, but I still couldn't figure out. Because like, on the other like higher level programming languages, you know specifically where the function is coming from because you have to specify on the path that you import. But here, because the linker does everything, like what is the best way to find the definition? Or maybe that's. I'm gonna see if I can ask ChatGPT if it's gonna say something useful. So, what is the best way to figure out function where does the definition of a function or structs declaration is located? Figure out where does the oh, well, honestly, maybe it's not that hard to like just copy everything. It just gets. I have to figure out. I think that this is one of the main ones for Windows. Obviously, it's gonna deal with the video. The biggest issue is that's the main structure is gonna depend on everything else. So so all of this stuff I don't need as well. The audio would be nice to have though, because I can think about a bunch of things that can do audio. The main things are audio and video. I think this other stuff's probably not necessary as well. Oh, this is where is the clear. Oh, that's. How would you find the definition? I think it is the one that is on the Windows video here. But it's no, it doesn't make sense. So how can I find this stuff here? Maybe it is on this file. Oh, it is here. I think what it's doing when it does this thing here is just initializing a pointer to the like a reference to the instance you initialize of the device. I don't understand why like use like this and not like this. I think I don't remember how I got here as well. I think it's gonna use this one for it's gonna in the same way that it uses the window struct to manage the data for the window, is gonna use this one to manage the functionality for like interacting with the window and creating the video. This is another thing that I want to clarify is like, what is the relationship between this library and OpenGL? How can I make the shaders work with these libraries here? Oh, OpenGL supports. So I think this is probably an interface or API. So it's like the model view controller thing. The view is the window, the controller is this thing, and the model, no, the model is OpenGL. Not really sure if that makes sense. Maybe the model is this one because there's several different ones. Yeah, so this is the model, the controller is OpenGL. Or is a different pattern. I think I'm gonna go back to the beginning and remember how like the flow of everything works from the main function there. I don't understand this very well. Oh yeah. So, but So I guess it just creates a pointer to the function create. Hey, thanks. So the way that I think about it is that the OpenGL is kind of like a more generic implementation. Like it's an API that allows you to interface with different GPUs. So the GPU manufacturer specifies the like how you're gonna be able to communicate with it from the operational system. So this is the thing that's I'm not 100% sure. Like I don't know exactly what is the relationship between OpenGL and the different operational systems. I think that's like is hardware then OpenGL, like directly on the hardware. Then from OpenGL you have the different operational systems. So like they all use the same interface. But then what changes between them is the way you're gonna access that interface. I think that's what's happening here, but I'm not 100% sure. So like this creates a struct. So like SDL is gonna be like a sequence of structs that have data, and then on those structs is gonna like the structs are gonna couple the operational system logic with the OpenGL. I think that's what's happening. So on the inside of the struct here, it has the specifications or whatever engine you want to use. I'm not really sure what's the like from what I've seen that Vulkan is a more like optimized version of OpenGL, but I'm not really sure if the way that I'm thinking about it is correct. So I think that all of these are engines, which are just a fancy way to say like, an API that communicates with the GPU, and then based on those engines, the operational system is gonna communicate with it. Yeah, I think that's what's going on. So this class, this struct here, manages the interface of the engine with the operational system, and the window class or the window struct creates the logic to use the operational system stuff. Like it creates the window and then it uses this other struct to create the bridge between the engine and the window. I think that's how it works. Not really sure about it though. This one I remember. I think I've seen the definition. I don't remember really well. Where did I? This is kind of the challenge between this, like doing this. That's like it starts getting confusing because then I forget, like how did I got to the point there. If I could just go, if I press F12 here, it's just gonna go there in the beginning. I'm not gonna do the graph for this one because I think it's gonna take too much time. So I'm just gonna. I think the best way to go about it now is just to continue to study the source code, try to understand on the concept level how everything connects with everything else, and then I'm probably gonna use Raylib instead of this one because I've seen that it works there. And then I'm just gonna try to get to the point where, because I have to start writing the code, and like this is gonna be very difficult as well. So I just want to get to the point where I have a string that loads a graph, and also I'm gonna have to implement barn sets, and then it's gonna be very challenging because of all the other stuff with the shaders and all the other stuff like that. So, but maybe it is worth it to just try to copy the header files from this one and only the C files that I think that are necessary to compile, like without using the external library. And then if I get to that point, then because I'm gonna have to study these libraries anyway, probably gonna have to use them. So maybe this is a like a good way to study them and also to like already start working on the stuff that I'm trying to build. So where did I? That's probably here. Yeah, just the same thing. I think I'm gonna close everything and start from the beginning. This time, try to remember how everything works. Maybe I should stop now and think about like uh, think about which way should I go about exploring this. I think the main thing that I'm curious about is understanding. So from what I think now, is probably gonna use a library from Windows, and that library is gonna have all the code to open a window, use the audio and everything from the operational system. So I think that's the main thing, like how does the library does that, and also the keyboard and the mouse. That's the main stuff. And then the second one is how it integrates with OpenGL or rendering. Yeah, because OpenGL is going to be the specification to render the shaders. So this is another question: is how you should. But the problem with that question is that I don't think it's not going to be from the library itself. I think the library just has the standards of like how should you create things, but it's not going to have anything related to the shaders because the shaders are supposed to do on your own project, I think. So which question should I put to clarify this? The thing is that it could be other libraries as well. That so I know that there are other math libraries that's you're supposed to download. So because I think that the shaders are gonna be like OpenGL is gonna interact with the shaders. So if I understand how SDL interacts with OpenGL, then like that's the other parts probably on the project itself. So like you have the OpenGL, then you have your own shaders on your own project, and then the shaders are going to be the data that the OpenGL uses to create the triangles on the GPU. So SDL is probably just going to have the stuff that manages the OpenGL API functions. So I guess like, this one thing, and the main thing probably. Those are the two things that I want to explore. So I'm gonna spend some time trying to see if I can find where this is the declaration and definition of this struct, and then I'll start from the beginning here. So on the C's video. So I think this is the main thing that is gonna handle everything. So, but the thing is, I don't want to create the. Like it's gonna take too long to create a graph. So, and this is a problem that I had on when I was studying the Python interpreter as well, is that it's very hard to keep track of how the data changes across the execution of the program. So, because I'm not gonna remember what each of these things are supposed to be. So the main thing that I'm curious about is this stuff here, because it's a similar pattern from the interpreter state from Python. Where it seems like, based on the names here, is probably a linked list. But I don't think that this is supposed to be. I think it's more either a linked list or a tree structure to keep track of multiple different windows you can have. Because I don't think that this should be. But it might be a linked list that handles the looping. Because I remember from other libraries as well, that from Pixie, I think. Yeah, I think mainly Pixie and probably 3JS as well. Creates a linked list to keep track of the state of the rendering cycle of the loop. When you create the window, you create a loop that's gonna have the frames. It's gonna update whatever happens. So in order to keep track of that, I think they usually use a linked list. So I'm not really sure if this is related to the linked list of the cycle of the rendering, like that creates the animation, or if it's more a tree or a linked list to figure out multiple or to manage multiple different windows. I think it's probably the last one that I said, because this one is probably the one that's because that one is probably the window manager, and then this data is related to the rendering cycle, I think. It's probably on the same file. So. But it's probably better to use the library and not try to copy everything, because it's also gonna handle multiple different operational systems. So it's gonna be like a lot of work if I try to separate. But maybe to learn is better to separate. As I think is my intuition is probably correct. So he's using this Windows header, and the Windows header probably has like all this the functionality to create windows and uh, do everything else. About any express or implied warranty, in no event will the authors be held liable. Missions, blah blah blah. Simple, direct, media layer. Yeah. So this comes from the program file, so it is related to Windows. It's not from SDL. So let me think. So I think that the main library is going to be Windows.h. And foundation is just going to be this thing here. As is a async status. So just a enum that keeps track of the state, probably. I don't understand how like, the data. I guess that it, it is a structure from the STL that has that thing from Windows and this other stuff here. So I guess the question is, so with this Y core, it probably is on another file from Windows. So it is a class, I think. Structs are classes. The only difference is that struct is public by default and the class is private, I think. The names, not the namespace. I'm not really sure if is the namespace the way you say that. Like the specifier for what's gonna be accessible outside. I think structs are whenever you declare something inside of the struct is gonna be public, which means that anything outside of the struct can have access to that. But if we're declaring a class, then it's gonna be private, which means that only the class itself has access to the attributes. And then usually the way that they recommend you to access those attributes is through getters and setters, which are methods you declare on the function that are public. Then like it works as a bridge from the data inside of the class. I think the reason why it's done like this is to prevent like exposing the functionality of your code. So like for example, you develop an app, then you deploy the app to several people. You don't want them necessarily to have access to all of your code if it's not open source. So I guess that this is the reason why like they create these different specifiers. But I think that you can inherit whenever you have structs, maybe. But I'm not really sure. So the way that I read this is that it is a struct that is inheriting from this class here, or this struct. It's probably a functionality from. It's probably not. It is functionality from Windows itself. Not really sure what language Windows was built. I think I'm gonna search that. I know that Linux was built on C, but probably C as well. Windows. Mostly C with some parts in assembly. Ask ChatGPT as well. So mostly, I think probably mostly C. It is kind of interesting to me though, too. But I'm not really sure if it's a waste of time now. I try to understand how everything works on Windows itself. It's probably very complicated, but I am curious about how does Windows connect, like what is the connection of the hardware and the pixels on the screen? Because obviously, not obviously, but I think that's all that a computer does. It's like a fancy calculator. So all that's happening is that you have binary states which is just like it's the manipulation of the electromagnetic field on the hardware based on geometry, and that creates a state, and then based on that state you have the standards, and based on those standards you create objects on the screen. So there's a relationship between the objects on the screen, the pixels on the screen, and the numbers that are created based on the binaries. So like the main difference between programming and mathematics, I think, is that the programming is just mathematics with logic, but I'm not really sure if that's the distinction, like the correct distinction. Because the main difference between the binaries and the calculations is that the binaries are also going to handle the coordination between multiple different parts of the hardware. So like there's this additional layer of the coordination between different parts, which is just managing where the data is going to flow. And then there is the actual mathematics, which is going to be the ALU and the registers. So like but I'm not really sure like what would be the equivalence in mathematics to the coordination of the different parts of the hardware. And I think that's one of the main distinctions that I'm trying to figure out as well. Like exactly at what points do data structures become algorithms and vice versa? Like what is the actual distinction between the two? Because at the end of the day, it's going to be the same thing. And I think that the thing is that the distinction is arbitrary because it's going to be a standard created by human beings, but at the same time, it's grounded on the laws physics, because the stuff that you create on the screen is a reflection of space-time. There's like a lower density version of space-time, you can say, like the digital space. And I think it's analogous to imagination. So like it's a funnel. I think that's what's happening. So like the computing is a projection of the collective consciousness which is just like it's the same thing as what's happening with space-time. It's just a funnel of information based on imagination. So like the internet is just a projection of the imagination of the collective consciousness, because you build concepts based on the standards that you set up on the hardware, but that has to be grounded on the physics, because you wouldn't be able to create objects if there wasn't information there. So even though it's an arbitrary standard to determine what instruction is going to be, the calculations have to be a reflection of the objects on real life. Otherwise, like there wouldn't be any meaning based on the digits. So I think I'm gonna go back to the beginning and maybe spend some time on this like another time. It's very hard to keep going back and forth between like this on my mind. I, the calculation of like where to spend time on is very hard, because there's like an infinite amount of stuff to learn. So let me go back to the beginning if I got you. It's more useful to try to see where does this, like where does the SDL code changes this, because then I'm gonna be able to like infer, or what's the point of this stuff here? But obviously it's something related to the window. I think it's gonna manage the state of the window based on whatever functions Windows have to create the window. But maybe I should study that as well, like because I think it's probably gonna take a lot of time. Because the problem is I would have to understand like the whole operational system. So maybe I will do that later, but let me close everything and go back to the beginning. And I do want to understand how Windows, like what is the logic that takes the assembly, which is going to be the interface, instruction set architecture. It's going to be the standard for the assembly code that is going to manage the hardware. So how does Windows use that to change the pixels on the screen? What is the connection between the pixels on the screen and the state of the hardware? It's probably going to be related to the graphics card, obviously, but and I think that OpenGL is obviously related to that because it's going to be the standard from which you can create the triangles. So I think that the way that it works is with buffers and processors on the GPU, and that's like the bridge of communication. So like the operational system is just orchestrating like how all the processes are gonna communicate with each other and change the data. But exactly what kind of like what data is responsible for, like how do you get the distinction between the coordination of the hardware and the data that is changing the state of the screen? I think that's the question I have. So based on ChatGPT, this is going to be pointers to functions. I receive arguments. And each one of them is going to be an instance of the struct itself. It's kind of confusing, but so I think this pattern is composition from what I remember. So whenever you have a struct that is initialized on another struct, I think that's composition. And when you inherit, then obviously it's inheritance. And usually people recommend composition over inheritance, and I think it has to do with the state of the electromagnetic field. It's just a reflection of how space-time works. So it's, and that's what code's gonna be, I think, for the most part. It's just like the representation of this gradient of variance on space-time. So this function receives both of them, like you initialize as null, both of them, then you pass through this function. And then probably these functions are gonna, I'm not really sure though. I think, yeah, when it creates this, it's probably gonna be null in the beginning. Like this. So just initialize everything, probably initialize this to null. So yeah, the only thing that makes sense is that this one is gonna connect both of them, but also, yeah, so it creates the window and then it creates the render from the window. So I think it is composition. And this renderer is probably the thing that's... So maybe this one's gonna change the data, or the window data there from the other struct. I don't understand why it creates a function pointer instead of creating a function, but I think it has to do with the instances of the thing. Like when you initialize, you create a pointer in memory to the function that is part of the struct. I'm not 100% sure. Yeah, but I think I understand this now, like this one. So let me try to continue the flow here. Title, flags. And this is kind of... Because they didn't initialize this one here. So that's the difference. I think it's the same thing. So So initialize one outside and makes it equal. I think it's confusing is the pointers as well. Like here is creating a null pointer. So this points to null, and then it passes the reference to the null pointer. So this accepts the reference to the reference, and then it did reference here. So I think here is making the pointer. So like this pointer was null. So this here is this value here, I think, because it's the referencing once. And then it makes it, so it's just updating the pointer instead of pointing to null. So I think I get it now. Like this is not the struct itself, is the pointer to the struct. That's why it creates twice here, I think. Then initializes this one here, which is just one pointer. And then it calls this. This probably sets up the initial properties of the window, which are this one, these ones. Then based on that, this one probably creates the window struct. Like it's gonna update the values of this struct here, and then it's just gonna return. And the other window is just a pointer to the struct that is created here, I think. So the other thing that I remember that a bunch of tutorials said and videos and books is that you should try to avoid creating returning pointers in functions because of this stack. So usually when you create a pointer to a place in memory inside of a function, whenever the function stops executing, the pointer is going to go out of scope. And if the pointer is pointing to the stack, then it's going to disappear. I think the value that the pointer is pointing to is going to be removed. So it's going to become a dangling pointer from what I remember. So you should avoid doing that. But the instances where it is fine to do that is when you create a value on the heap. So like, but I'm not 100% sure. But like based on this stuff, I think that it makes sense to assume that this function here is going to create a value on the heap because it's creating a pointer inside of the function. It's going to return that value. So, but I'm not 100% sure. So it just initializes the compiler stuff that I was doing some time ago. Like does the same thing. So static, as far as I understand, is to declare global variables. So it's just initializing a global SDL video device. Just a pointer, no pointer in the beginning. I, I fucked that up because I put the stuff there to memorize the other path. And this is the one that I was looking at before. It's just a struct that is going to contain. So I guess the way that I'm thinking about it is correct. So this one is going to be, so this is a property on the window. So like this is a pointer. This pointer is going to point to this thing, to a struct, yeah, because of this function here. That struct is going to be this type here, which is going to contain the data to manage whatever happens on the window. And then one of the values inside of the struct is going to be this video device. And this is the thing that is going to contain, is going to communicate with OpenGL or another engine you have to render everything. So I think that the OpenGL is the interface from the hardware. And SDL communicates with OpenGL to change the state of the screen. So I think it's starting to make more sense in my mind. But I fucked it up here because now I memorized this path. I don't remember where I was. So SDL is kind of like the controller, I think. The models are the engines. SDL is the controller that's going to select which model we want based on the functions you call. But actually, no. The view would be the window. So SDL is kind of like SDL is the controller. The view is the window that comes from the windows.h function or whatever operation system we have. So yeah, SDL is the controller between the. So one side you have the operational systems, in the middle you have SDL, and the other one you have the engines, and then the engines communicate with the GPU, and SDL organizes both the window and the engine, like coordinates them to render, to change the state of the screen, I think. So I was looking into this. So if you don't have the video device is not null, then it returns null. Because initially it's gonna be, but like shouldn't you dereference here because it's gonna be like a pointer in the beginning? I don't understand this very well. As far as I understand, it's creating a global pointer to null, like a global null pointer. It's gonna have this type. And then, but here, like in my mind, it would make more sense to like the reference to check the actual value, not the pointer. But maybe, yeah. So I think it does like this because yeah, the value, no, but the pointer is null, but the value is not necessarily null. Maybe I'm not really sure. So it is a null pointer, but the type. So like when you specify when you initialize the pointer as null and you specify the type is just indicating to the compiler what kind of memory structure is gonna have to eventually delegate to that pointer, I think. So, but the thing that is null is the pointer itself, because the pointer is just a number, which is an address in memory. So I think that's why it doesn't do reference here, because I'm not 100% sure. Maybe like I don't know if you the reference you're gonna get the. It wouldn't make sense for you to get the data as well for the. Yeah, I think that it wouldn't make sense, but whatever. So as far as I understand, it's just checking if the pointer is not null, if it is if checking if the pointer is null, because this is gonna fail if it is not null. So if you have something already, the function returns no. So it's probably just to make the function only working when you're like initializing everything. I'm not gonna look into all of this other stuff. That's just changing the flags based on whatever is the state of the window. This is probably an enum somewhere. Yeah, it's gonna have flags to indicate the state of the window. And it creates based on the properties. So it sets the state of the window initially based on the properties that initialized there in the beginning. And returns the flags. It's passing the video device. And so this is it's just a check. It's checking to see what kind of an engine it's gonna use, I think. This is just gonna be the flag. So if this flag is not working in this other one, we're just changing the flags. It's probably to select the engine and the initial states of the window. So here, so it is what I was thinking about, because I think this is gonna allocate some space on the heap based on the size of the struct of the SDL window. But I'm not really sure. So I don't know if this creates a pointer to the thing. I think it initializes the memory to handle the space of this, but then it returns a pointer to that space. I think that's probably what's happening. Yeah. It doesn't really matter that much, but it's kind of annoying that I can't figure out where this is from. Are you sure? No, whatever. I'm not gonna spend too much time on this. Yeah, so I'm pretty sure that it creates a pointer to a space on the heap that's gonna have this structure, and here it initialize everything. So it's linking the magic, whatever this is, with the video device thing. Let me close this one. This thing here. Not sure where magic is here. I knew it was gonna do that. Also, it's right in the beginning. A constant void pointer. Oh, this is another confusing thing, but I think I remember. So whenever you have the const first, it means that it points to a constant. And if you have the const after, then the pointer is the constant. So this creates a pointer to a place in memory that is a const, I think. So yeah, this is actually the other one, window magic. And then on the window is the magic one. And the problem now is I have to find where this window magic is, or the window thing is. So I think there's the same file. Yeah, they are on the same file. Oh, I don't remember now. I think it was on. I don't remember which one was the other one that I was looking at. It was video device, I think. It is this one. It is on the same file, so yeah, it's this one. So it's the magic of the window to the window magic of the other one. And this is a number. The other one. Hmm. So it's probably a constant number, I think. So this is a pointer to the const. And this is a uint. But it doesn't declare as a const here. Not really sure. Whatever. Hmm. I don't understand why. The name is Windows, so it would make more sense to me that it's supposed to create like an array of windows or something like that. To keep so the SDL video keeps track of multiple different windows. But based on this, it's just a pointer to the other one, so I'm not really sure how this works. So maybe it's a linked list here. Windows priv. Because the Windows object, like the window object, which is the SDL window, is gonna have the linked list thing there, I think. So this creates a linked list, I think, of windows. Yeah, that's probably what's happening. So this one's gonna be a linked list, it's gonna be the head of a linked list, I think. It does have. then it just sets up, just makes the previous equal to the window. So it's linking the SDL video with the window, and the window has has a linked list for other windows. So create SDL window. Create SDL window. It's probably gonna be one of those function pointers there. Create SDL window. And the question is, how do I find the definition? That's the problem. Because I think if I press here, it's not gonna go anywhere. So I think it does with the arrow here to the reference. So when you initialize the pointer to this function here, and then it checks to see if the thing has the function, and then the reference should call the function. But the problem is I don't know where is this thing comes from. Also, is one of these things here probably one of these flags here. Right, it's just checking to see if the video thing has the support for whatever engine you want to use. So I'm trying to figure out where the this is initialized. But I think that's gonna be the null pointer there in the beginning that I saw. Yeah, so, and here checks to see if it's not null. So the question is I have is that if this is null in the beginning, then what is it calling there? But maybe it's gonna be null in the beginning, so it's just gonna fail the thing. The first one is not gonna call anything. Yeah, that's probably what's happening. So it checks it here in is null, and then it just doesn't do anything, I think. That's probably what's going on. So this is probably the function that calls something from Windows, or it just applies a bunch of flags. So I think I kind of understand now. At least the beginning. They just initialize the struct. It's gonna be this one. This one has the other one, and the STL video one is the stuff that has this one. This struct has the functionality to change this to manage the state of the window, and this stuff is gonna call whatever engine you want, and then based on the engine is the thing that is gonna call the functionality, or it's gonna make the GPU render stuff. I think that's how it works. And then it's gonna do everything based on these events. So the events are gonna change the data inside of the struct. It's gonna change the, it's gonna call the functions to render stuff. So I understand now how it works. It's not that difficult. It's, funny enough, it's like a lot harder to actually build the everything than to understand how the library works. So I think I'm gonna stop streaming now. What I'm probably gonna do is just go with Raylib. I think I'm gonna spend some time off stream trying to make it work, trying to like see what I'm doing wrong here with CMake. And the other alternative is just to copy paste a bunch of these files in my own project to see if I can make it work. Just like, but I don't think that's probably good. 'Cause I think it's better to just try to use the libraries and then get to the point where I have the graph. Because I want to start, I want to continue to build the stuff that I was trying to build. Because then I'm going to be able to use that to learn faster everything. So I think I'm going to spend some time more trying to make this work with CMake. If it doesn't work, if it's too hard or spending too much time trying to make it work, then I'm just going to go with the Raylib. That it seems like it is working. And then I'm probably going to do the same thing that I did here for SDL, but for Raylib, just go over the source code, try to understand how it works. Then once I understand how it works, then I'm going to try to start building stuff from scratch with Raylib. I think that's probably better. Either that or I'm going to spend more time because I do want to figure out how I want to create a template that I can use for any project just based on whatever libraries I think are essential to build graphics with C++. That's the, because then once I'm able to figure that out, then I don't have to spend time anymore thinking about CMake. So I just have to figure out an approach that is going to work always with whatever libraries I want to use. And so probably I will spend a lot more time trying to, maybe now that I understand more how the STL library works, it's going to be easier to make that happen. I'm going to watch a bunch of videos and try to find resources again to see what I'm doing wrong here with the linking. But if I spend too much time, like more than a week, or if I spend 1 week and I can't figure out, then I'm just going to go with Braylib, I think. So yeah, I'm not really sure when I'm going to come back, but I'm going to continue to try to do this stuff. So yeah, see you then.